Good afternoon, everyone, and I thought I would show you guys around my vintage system and also talk about quadraphonic. So let's get to it. So the first piece in the system is this. This is an Akai 4000D reel-to-reel tape machine. This particular model came out in the early 60s. However, they did make it in various variations of basically the same machine all the way into the 80s. Works fine, functions great, no issues. Basically has been restored. And everything functions exactly how it should and how you expect it to. It is a 7-inch only machine, which is fine. Of course, as I talked about in a previous video, I recently picked up some new tape. Although priorly I had bought a reel of Scotch 90 for it, or I should say Scotch 207. And also have a couple pre-recorded albums I picked up. This is one of them. You guys don't want to know what this thing cost, but anyway, yeah, this is the Akai 4000D reel-to-reel. The next item heading down is the MCS 5000 series 6807 compact disc player. This came out in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. Works well, works just like new, functions perfectly. It's got a Phillips mechanism in here. Yeah, functions great, works great, no issues of any kind. Picked it up mostly because it was cheap, and a lot of the early CD players, in my opinion, actually sound really good and sound very, very nice. This one included, even though it is a budget piece. It doesn't have any sort of digital out, so you can only use it as just a CD player. You can't use it as a transport, but what else is there to say about it? MCS was a brand of JCPenney's in the day, and this came as a part of a system. You can kind of stack system with a receiver, a tape machine, equalizer, the whole thing. And of course you can use them separately, but yeah, a good basic budget. Actually, you can pick these up for about 30-40 bucks on eBay all day long. Anyway, all right, the next item in the tour is this. This is a Technics SLQD 33. Very highly regarded, fully automatic direct drive quartz lock turntable from probably about 84-ish, 85-ish, somewhere in there. Functions, works well. It's got the original cartridge, but not the original stylus. Basically in brand new mint condition. Even the dust cover here is perfect. Works well, functions great, as I said. All the functions work, repeat works, queuing works, everything works exactly how it should and how it ought to. And yeah, a basic, good, old Technics turntable from back in the day. They made several variations of this. The BD series, the BD20, BD22 series that are basically the same design, more or less. But they're belt drive and not direct. They made several variations of this one as well, with varying features and so forth. This one's neat in the sense that it's a P-mount cartridge style tone arm, but you can adjust the counterweight, which is kind of interesting for P-mount cartridges. A lot of people don't think you can adjust the counterweight on P-mount cartridges, but on this particular tone arm design, one of the features is that you could. So yeah, good old Technics direct drive, works and performs fantastically. Next up is this component. This is a Yamaha audio timer DT2, basically an audio timer, meaning you can plug things into it like a tape deck and a receiver, for example, or a tuner and a tape deck, and you could schedule them to come on at certain times so that you can get a recording of your favorite radio program or TV show or something like that. That was the original idea of these. However, I'm not using it for that. I'm actually using it just for the clock. Although I do have the turntable running into its power, which you can turn on and off with that. If you want it in the auto or ever on, as it's called. I do have the turntable and a tape deck running into that. And yeah. Below it is the Panamax MR4300. Good old little power conditioner, kind of a newer model from Panamax. Works well, functions great, no issues of any kind. I got it as an upgrade to the Furman that I had been using and got all my components kind of plugged into that. Sorry for the next shot, but I've got a couple pieces that I currently don't have hooked up because I'm waiting for another piece to come in. I ordered off eBay. This, of course, is a Technics double deck, or a dual well deck, however you want to call it. An RSD 550, pretty decent deck. It's got new belts in it. Everything works perfect. Kind of a basic deck for back in the day, kind of middle 80s, very similar to the MCS in terms of kind of being a kind of a budget piece, but it performs well. The nice thing about this deck is it doesn't have auto reverse. I did not want auto reverse. One of the reasons being, and anybody who's had a 90s Sony machine that featured auto reverse will know, is that the heads flip around to achieve auto reverse. The problem with that is over time, that flipping motion, even though the heads are metal, the actual component that does the flipping is plastic. And over time that kind of wears down and causes those heads to get misaligned and causes the sound quality of those machines to deteriorate from what they once were. This is not a auto reverse machine, so when I get done playing this side, I've got to flip her over and play the other side. But yeah, fully restored, new belts, works perfect. I actually got it at the same time I got the MCS. And of course down below you can see this is the Sony TC 228 8-track stereo tape recorder, as Sony called it. Also fully restored, great, very, very great condition. Works and performs fantastic. I recently demoed this in kind of a little short I made. Got a few tapes for the 8-track here. And I'm waiting on a piece, I'll put a picture of it up here, a Sony SB300, basically a tape selector. It allows you to connect 3 tape machines up to 1 tape loop. And that way you can select between them. And I'll have this hooked up with this, coupled with my reel-to-reel that you already saw, and kind of have it into one input, and I'll just be able to select between the various tape machines I want to record to, or of course I want to listen to. The next item in the collection, of course, is more or less the heart of the system. This is the Nikko 3035 stereo receiver. Basically restored, more or less. There are a few capacitors that weren't changed out because there's nothing wrong with them, but everything functions basically perfectly, just like new. Which honestly is quite amazing because most often, a lot of times I've had receivers and there always seems to be something wrong with them. The muting switch doesn't work, or AM doesn't work, or various things. This one is absolutely perfect, 100%. Everything's plugged into this. This came out in about 1974-ish, 5-ish, somewhere in there. They made it for a couple of years. It's about 17 watts a channel-ish, and functions well and sounds fantastic. This isn't the first Nikko piece that I've heard, but it certainly is a good one and kind of reminiscent of Yamaha in a little bit of ways, but everything works very well into this. And then when I get the Sony SB300, it's going to live right here, and then I'll just be able to hit tape monitor and be able to select my various tape machines with the SB300, kind of, you know, that way. But anyway, let me show you the speakers. So here's my speakers, or speaker I should say. This is a Jensen tri-ette TR10. Came out in the late 50s, kind of into the 60s. They actually made it for quite a while, and they made it in a couple versions. This is what they call the finished version. You can see because the wood is sculpted on here. Technically speaking, these were made to kind of lay on their side, but obviously I've got them standing up just because of space constraints, and I think they sound better standing up. I did try them laying down on some stands. I do think they sound better like this. But yeah, they haven't been restored because there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. They sound quite remarkable. Most people say, oh, the woofers rot. Well, not always. Or change capacitors. Well, not always. These things actually perform and function perfectly just like the day they were made. They are a little rough around the edges, but I'm not really 100% caring about their looks so much as their performance, and in that respect, they perform 100%. So let's talk about quadraphonic, okay? So I want to preface that with stating that I am not a quad expert. I am not a quad pro. I don't know everything about quad. There's other sources out there. I'm going to put the Wikipedia link for quadraphonic down below. There's way better sources for quad than me. I'm just gonna share with you guys the equipment I have, my limited knowledge, my little bit experience of using it, and kind of experiencing it, and kind of tell you guys what I think, okay? So, first off, quadraphonic came out in the early 70s-ish, more or less. There were several formats of quad: CD4, Dynaquad, SQ, QS, which was Sansui's format, so on and so forth. In the United States, SQ seemed to be the most popular format. In particular, it tends to be the majority of records and equipment that you tend to find, or at least I tend to find, that I come across, tends to be equipment and records that are the SQ format, which was of course Columbia's format. And this is the Ramsey Lewis Trio's Upindo ni Pamoja. Yeah, there you go. So that's one record I've got. But anyway, SQ does tend to be the more, I've seemed to have noticed, does tend to be the more common format. The nice thing about SQ is it's a matrix format, meaning you can play the records on a standard stereo turntable and through a stereo system, and it sounds fine, sounds normal. But when you play it through a quad and you hit the quad switch, it becomes quad. And of course, it pulls those two rear channels out of the front two channels, so you get proper quad. CD4 was the discrete format. There were other ones as well, but CD4 tended to be the most popular discrete, meaning the record is recorded in 4-channel and it will not play properly on a standard 2-channel turntable. And you need a special stylus for that. You need a whole special setup. They made decoder boxes. There were also equipment that had all the formats built into it, all kinds of things. Pioneer, this particular equipment here, is SQ, and it's a matrixed system as well. And what that means is that in here we can have it be, where's the switch? We can have it be SQ, or we can have it be matrixed, which means it basically takes a 2-channel source and outputs, kind of manufactures 2 ambience channels, is basically what happens. So it makes a 2-channel source into a quad source, more or less, is kind of the explanation for that. But anyway, when you do have a proper quad record and you do have the proper quad equipment, the sound quality you get is very interesting. It's I can't even begin to describe it. Actually, well, that's what I'm going to try to do, isn't it? It's very, very interesting. So, oh, and by the way, that wasn't the only SQ record I've got. I also have this Super Session, which was Mike Bloomfield, Al Cooper, and Steve Stills. Basically a kind of blues jam record. It's actually, I didn't know this record existed. Not just in the quad format, obviously, but just in general. And it's actually a really sweet album. It's basically a blues album, but it's very well recorded, and it's also very kind of like a jam session. It's really cool. It's a really, really neat record. But yeah, so getting back to it, the sound quality of this stuff is just interesting to say the least. And it kind of depends. The Ramsey Lewis Trio's Upindo ni Pamoja is, I'm probably butchering that, I know I am. It's not as quad as this thing. This thing is super quad. And what I mean by that is this thing has way more 4-channel information happening. Stuff kind of pans between left front and left rear and right front and right rear, and there's stuff going on all around you. It's really cool. It's like an experience. It truly is. If you ever have the opportunity to hear a quad setup, I really suggest you do. However, that leads me into the thing that I really wanted to say, which was, it's not that big of a deal. It's kind of a novelty. So Techmoan did a video about quad, kind of. He got a record sent to him excuse me, he had a record sent to him, and you know, it had like a quad decoder, and you know, he like set up a little active monitors around him and to check it out, right? And you know, and I'm going to come to the same conclusion he did, which was it's kind of an experience, but it's not something you do all the time. You know what I mean? It's kind of like going to Disney World and riding the Avatar ride. It's really cool when you're doing it. It's really neat, but it's not something for every day. I can get the attraction. I can certainly, now that I played quad and, you know, of course, have the equipment to play it, it's definitely an attraction. But you know, it's more of a kind of experience. But it's not something for every day. Stereo provides you with way more than enough that you need, in my opinion, and I can definitely understand why quad died out over time, because not that it's limiting, but it's kind of a gimmick as well in a lot of ways. And also too, quad equipment and the records themselves are, in my opinion, hard to come by. The records, obviously, you can go on Discogs, you can go on eBay, and you can buy every SQ quad release ever made with the click of a button. I get that. I don't tend to buy records that way. I tend to go to record shops, record stores. I tend to go to antique shops. That's how I buy records. That's how I came by these, because that's how I buy records. I don't buy records online. I very rarely buy records online, because to me, buying records, the process of it is going into a store, looking for records, kind of the process, the treasure digging, that sort of thing. That's record buying to me, and that's what I do. And yeah, so also the equipment. Quad equipment is easy to come by, but here's an experiment for you. Go on eBay and look up any brand, Sansui, Marantz, Pioneer, Kenwood, Onkyo, whatever, any brand. Almost all of them you'll come across that is quad. 90% of quad equipment that you come by, whether it's a receiver, an amplifier, a decoder box, whatever, 90% of them are for parts not working. There's something to that. Conversely, go on there and equally look at any brand. Nikko, Pioneer, Sansui, Marantz, Macintosh, whatever you want, whatever brand you can think of. And look at their stereo receivers, amplifiers, whatever. You can, about 40% are for parts not working. There's something to quad equipment for whatever reason. A lot of it just doesn't work anymore. It's broken and it's hard to fix and it's got extra complication, and I'm not sure why. And it could be that that is the reason why, because it is extra complicated. Because back in the day, they were working with what they were working with, and it was great and it functioned well for 2 channels. But when they added the other 2 in there, it started to cause issues. And the equipment worked fine for a time while it was there, but it just doesn't last over time because of that complication. You know what I mean? Or the old kind of expression, keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? But yeah, definitely interesting. It was an experience to try quad out. And again, I'm no quad expert. I just thought I would set up a system. I came across this stuff for really cheap. I'm not going to keep it, unfortunately, just because of this piece right here. This has already been sold. This thing's worth a lot of money. A lot of money. Like, you can buy a car for how much these things go for. But yeah, so it's already been sold, but the whole system. But yeah, it was neat to try. It's an experience. I'm glad I tried it. But yeah, that's it. Sorry to kind of keep you guys. I know it's kind of a long video. I didn't mean for it to be a long video. And I didn't even really talk about my vintage system a whole lot, my stereo vintage system, but I like it. It's been fantastic. It's been really, really good. And it's been kind of a change and a break from my kind of regular kind of high-end system that I've put together. It's been kind of more relaxing, if you get what I mean. Anyway, peace out. My voice is kind of breaking up a little bit, and stay tuned. And we've got a review of the Hi-Fi Audio Neo IBSD 2. Anyway, peace out.